Let's begin creating a rig in Adobe Animate. We'll start by importing our Illustrator artwork, resizing it to fit the window, and going through each and every character part, creating symbols out of each. When we're done, we'll have control handles that will allow us to move our character around within our timeline to create animated sequences. Our character hierarchy is made up of bones called an armature. Each of these armature bones are bound to our character artwork. The reason that we need to have our artwork separated into different layers is so that they can bend and move with our bone structure. We'll be creating controls that we'll place at the end of our character's limbs so that we have a better control over our character's animations. Now, a bone structure or armature is made up of several bones that have rotational axis points. Each of these rotational axis points can have a different setting. We can either prevent bones from moving or restrict their movement within a character. We'll first be bringing in the Adobe Illustrator artwork as a symbol by importing it directly to our library. We'll then duplicate that symbol and create a rig. We'll then duplicate that symbol one more time and create an animated project. It's good to have backups of our character symbols as we work through our character animations. This way we'll always have a full backup of our character in case we need to go back and adjust things. To begin, we'll create a new file in Adobe Animate. Select File, New, or Command N from our keyboard. Choose Full HD or 1920 by 1080 for the resolution. We're going to import Adobe Illustrator artwork that has already been separated into layers. Select File, Import, and Import to Library. When we import to Library, our artwork will be automatically converted to a symbol that we can use on our stage. A symbol has its own timeline, so it will separate all of the artwork layers that we have in our Adobe Illustrator document and place them in layers within our symbol timeline. When I choose my Adobe Illustrator file, I'll be given the option to select all layers. Leave everything else as it stands with Convert Layers to Animate Layers. Now, when I import my file, it will appear as a symbol in our symbol library in the sidebar on the right-hand side under the tab Library. I can now drag that symbol and put it onto the stage. If my symbol is too large, I can resize the stage so that I see all of my artwork by choosing Show All from the Zoom menu at the top right-hand corner of this screen. I can then resize my character symbol by choosing Free Transform in the left-hand side toolbar, or Q on the keyboard. This will bring up transformation handles around my character's dimensions that I can drag and resize my character with. Hold down the Shift key to constrain the proportions. Now when I double-click my character, I'll be inside my character, inside my symbol's timeline. You'll see at the top, right above our scene, we'll have the option of going back to the scene, and we'll also have the name of our character to the right when we're inside our symbol. You'll note that all of the artwork has been imported in layers within the timeline beneath our scene window. To begin creating an armature for our character, we'll have to convert all of our character parts into symbols. We're going to fit our window by choosing Fit in Window. This will give us a full size of our screen. To begin creating symbols, we'll select the layer that contains our layer artwork. You'll note that there are several pieces of artwork within one layer. If I select the artwork on the screen, within the stage window, I'm only selecting one piece of artwork. By selecting the layer that the artwork is contained in, it will select all of the elements, all of the artwork contained within that layer. With the layer selected, we'll choose Modify and Convert to Symbol. So that's Modify, Convert to Symbol, or F8 on our keyboard. When I convert an object or group of artwork to a symbol, a dialog box will appear allowing me to name the symbol. We'll keep the name of the symbol the same as our layer. We'll leave the type as graphic. When we hit OK, we'll see that our symbol now appears in our symbol library in the bar on the right-hand side. We'll continue to do this with all of our character parts by first selecting the layer that the artwork is contained in, then choosing Modify from the top menu bar and Convert to Symbol, or F8 on the keyboard. Continue going through all of the layers within the timeline and converting them to symbols. Once we have all of the character parts converted to symbols, we can organize them into a folder within our symbol library. At the bottom of the library, you'll see the option to create a new folder. You can rename the folder by double-clicking on it. You can then select all of the symbols that were created and place them into your folder. We're going to create 2 more symbols of our character, so we always have a backup. So we'll create a new character folder, and I'm going to place the original artwork symbol that I've imported into my new character folder. I will then duplicate that symbol of our character, which currently contains all the symbols that we've converted, to use for our armature or rig. Our character rig symbol will contain all of the armature with control points. To begin creating our armature, we'll double-click on the character that we've just duplicated, the symbol that contains all of our artwork. We can name the original character Original if you like, to make sure that we don't confuse it. To begin creating bones for our character, we'll select the Bone tool, or choose M on your keyboard. If you don't see the Bone tool, which is in the toolbar on your left-hand side, you can click the Edit Toolbar button, which is represented by 3 dots at the bottom of the toolbar. It will allow you to drag and move the different tools into your new tool set to customize your tool set. So to start creating our armature, we'll select the Bone tool or M on the keyboard. We should have a full view of all of our character parts. I've chosen a 3/4 position character so that we can demonstrate how to hide and reposition parts to make it easier to create an armature. We need all of our parts to be completely visible in order to create our armatures. Since we need to start with the hips, I'll need to make this thigh invisible. If I were to click on that artwork, it would show up as the layer left thigh in my timeline. Now if I have the bone tool selected and I hold down my command key on my keyboard or control in Windows, it will allow me to select my artwork. Otherwise, I can choose the selection tool or V on the keyboard. So to begin working with the hips, starting with the hips, I'll need to make this left thigh invisible. I can do that by selecting the symbol for invisibility on the layer containing my artwork. Now that I can see my hips, I can begin creating my armature. Select the bone tool or M on the keyboard and click and drag where your spine would start. When I click, it will set the rotational point for that bone. And when I drag up, it will give me an indicator to tell me that whatever it's pointing at, it can link to. You can see the icon change as we move it over another symbol. I'll want to bring my bones up to about the middle of the chest or the upper portion of the chest. From this point, I can begin creating bones to establish the head position or my arms. So I'll start with the arms. By clicking on the last bone that I have created, I'm going to drag and position the bone at approximately the rotational location of my shoulder for the left arm. I'll continue creating the bones by clicking and dragging down to the next symbol, stopping at where the rotational point would be. I'll continue creating the armature by selecting the middle of the chest bone and dragging it to the neck symbol of my character. I'll click again to add the head symbol. Now to create the legs, I'm going to drag my armature layer to the very bottom. That will enable me to see my legs through the armature. I'll start with my right leg, or the back leg, so we want to click on the hip, drag to the rotational position of my thigh, or the top of the thigh, to join that artwork to our armature. I'll click again and drag down so it connects with the next symbol at the point which will be the knee, and so on. My left thigh was invisible, so I've made it visible again. If I grab from the bone structure, starting at the hip, over to the thigh, I'm unable to make the armature work. This is because my armature is hidden behind my thigh layer. So now I'll select my armature layer and drag it above the thigh layer so that now I can see my armature and I'm able to select it and now drag it to the artwork, which is my thigh layer. Whenever your artwork is hidden behind each other, just maneuver the layers within the timeline or hide them so that you're able to see the artwork and your armature in order to create your armature and bind it to your artwork. Make sure that when you're clicking and dragging that you are connecting to the correct bone. You'll see that several attempts there were made and it kept trying to connect from the hip. It may help to zoom in a bit to make sure that you have the proper connection. When I've finished creating my armature for my character, I can now reposition the artwork within the armature. You'll see now that all of my layers have been reduced to one armature layer in the timeline. So to reposition my artwork, I can use the selection tool, or V on the keyboard. Select the artwork that I want to arrange within my character and choose Modify from the top menu, Arrange. Now you can choose whether to bring it right to the front of your character, one step further to the front of the character, or backward, or send to the back. Because the left side of my character is the one that is closest to the camera, I'll want to bring my left arm and legs to the very front. Select all of the artwork that you wish to bring to the front and choose Modify, Arrange, Bring to Front. Conversely, my right-hand side will be the furthest from the camera. So I will choose Modify, Arrange, Send to Back. My right arm is the absolute furthest from the camera, so I will select that right arm and make sure that it is the furthest back. Modify, Arrange, Send to Back. That way, when I grab my arm and animate it, it will disappear behind the right leg of my character. Now that we have the armature of our character set up and all of our artwork properly positioned, we can animate the position of our character now by selecting each of the endpoints of our limbs. However, when we work in inverse kinematics, which is the way that this armature is set up, we'll find that having a controller at the end of our limbs and at the top of the head is going to allow us to make more accurate movements. So to create controllers for our character, we're going to create a new layer in our timeline, and we're going to draw a shape on our stage. I'm going to choose an oval tool, hold down the Shift key, and then click and drag to create a circle. Holding down my Command key or Control key, I can drag around that circle and convert it to a symbol. Modify in the top menu, the main menu, Modify, Convert to Symbol, or F8 on the keyboard. We can call this Control. Now that our control is a symbol, we can drag it to the ends of our character's limbs, and by choosing the symbol within the symbol library, we'll drag it onto the stage, which will create another instance of that symbol. So both of these pieces of artwork are the same artwork. They are just multiple instances of that artwork. By dragging the control from our symbol library again, we can create another instance of that symbol. It's a direct copy. So anytime we change the artwork for this symbol, all of these symbols on our stage will reflect that change. We'll put a control node on top of the head and at the end of each limb. Once our control nodes have been placed, we'll choose our bone tool, or M, on the keyboard. Select our armature by clicking on our character using our Command or Control key on the keyboard. To add the controller to our structure, we'll select the last point in the chain and drag our bone out to include the controller within our armature. We'll do this for each of the limbs. Ensure that it is the last link in the chain that you are tying your controller to. If you are having troubles, zoom in a little further to make sure that you're selecting the correct part of the bone to link to your controller. It must be the last point in your limb's bone hierarchy. Our armature is now complete. We're going to make a duplicate of this symbol and its armature so that we again have a backup. We created control points to place at the end of our limbs of our character and on top of the head. We don't want those control points to be visible. So by double-clicking on those control points, we'll open up the symbol that artwork exists in. We can select that artwork, go to the Properties tab, Properties panel on the right-hand side. This opens up a whole new array of instruments that we can play with. This includes color and style. We'll choose 0% for the opacity of our fill and stroke, and that will make our artwork invisible. When we double click the stage, we'll go back to our character. We'll see your character's armature and just outlines of the controllers when we select our character. So we won't see them in the final animation. We'll go back to our library, and I'm going to select the character symbol and double click it in the library. This is the one where we've created the armature for. I'll start by duplicating the armature, the character that we've created the armature for, and name it Anim1. We'll just be testing our character out here to see how well it moves so that we can start animating it. You can see right away that the bones are moving away from the character whenever I move the control points. I need to find a way to keep some of these bones stationary. So by selecting a bone, I can now move over to the Properties panel and choose the Object tab. You'll see that I can name my bones, so I'll name this one Left Chest. It's currently set to rotation. I can choose to deselect rotation, and now this bone will not move. I can also choose to select X translation and Y translation, controlling the horizontal movement and the vertical movement. We can also get into fine details that we won't approach right now. All we're worried about is our character's basic movements. Now that you'll see that by selecting these bones and limiting their rotational movement, now when I grab my controller, the arms respond properly. Go through your entire character just to make sure that all of the bones are set to the proper joint rotation so that they don't look goofy when you start animating your character. We can also select the speed of our bones, so the influence that they have over the bone hierarchy. So for instance, when I grab the controller and move my arm, you can see that the entire arm moves pretty fluidly with the controller. I might want it to be a little more controlled. So I'll select the upper portion of the arm, and from the Properties panel within the Object tab, I can set the speed as to which that arm will move, or that bone will move in relation to the rest of the hierarchy. Typically we'll want to set the bones that are closer to the body to a lower speed. So typically we'll want to set the bone strength for limbs closest to the body to a lower amount. And as the limbs go further from the body, the speed will exponentially increase. Now when I test out my limb hierarchy, you can see that my shoulder is moving much slower than the rest of my arm, thereby giving me a little bit more of a refined movement with my controller. Go through the rest of your bone structure, testing it with the controller and maneuvering the bones to make sure that all your bone constraints, your speed and strength of the bones, are properly adjusted. We can also constrain the rotation of our bones. So if I don't want my chest to move any more than 45-degree angles, then I'll select the bone, choose Constrain, and set the offset limits. Experiment with this. I've also noticed that by grabbing my controller or my bones and moving them about, that my arm is going behind the leg of my character, which is not what I want. In order to fix this, I'll have to bring the artwork in my character's arm to the front. To adjust the arrangement of my character's parts in relation to the camera, I'll choose Free Transform, or Q on the keyboard. That will allow me to select the symbols that represent the artwork of my character. I can then arrange the position of those symbols by choosing Modify from the top bar menu and scrolling down to Arrange. I want these to be the closest to the camera, so I'll bring them right to the front. Now when I choose Selection Tool, or V on the keyboard, and move my character's arms, we can see that the artwork passes in front of the layer that I had intended it to. Once we're happy with our character's armature and the way that everything moves, we can start animating. Go to your timeline underneath the scene window, and you'll see that we already have one single keyframe that represents the position that our character is currently in. To create a new keyframe, we'll select a frame of the timeline, right-click it, and choose Insert Pose. So I've created one keyframe directly in front of the first keyframe. This is in frame 2. I'll keep my initial keyframe intact with no movement whatsoever to my armature, so that I always have something to go back to. Now I want to create a pose, let's say frame 10. So I'll select that frame, right-click it, and choose Insert Pose. Now I can move my character around into the pose that I want him to be in. Make adjustments to your bone rotations if you need to. Things aren't working right for you. And now you'll see that Adobe Animate has done all the heavy lifting for us. By creating a keyframe, it's automatically created our in-betweens from one keyframe to another. Now I can choose to select another frame and continue posing my character, or if I want my character to go back to its original stance, I can select the first keyframe, right-click it, and choose Copy Pose. I can then go back to the keyframe that I wish my character to return to, and choose Paste Pose. That concludes the demonstration of character animating within Adobe Animate.